Chapter 385. This is your Yang family. The Immortal Ascension Boundary 8th Stage Master who was fighting with the two blood warriors sneered. The Yang family is arrogant and domineering. This time I'll end your Yang family bloodline. His tone was vicious, as if he had a great grudge with the Yang family. Tu Feng and Tang Yuxian's expressions suddenly sank, realizing that this wasn't a random battle, but rather a premeditated ambush set up by the other party to target the Yang family. There were 3 opponents, so even if the 2 blood warriors were anxious and wanted to rush to Yang Kai's aid, they couldn't do so in a short time. Yuxian! Tu Feng suddenly roared, knowing that time was precious and didn't want to delay any longer. Tang Yuxian's body twisted as a ferocious surge of true qi burst forth from her body, wrapping the entire area around her in a cloud of mist. At the same time, her powerful divine sense was also activated, and a powerful soul skill was used to attack the weakest Immortal Ascension Boundary Master. The 2 blood warriors were anxious to protect their master, so obviously they were using their trump cards. The 3 Yang family blood warriors working together had easily blocked Tang Yuxian's soul skill, but they were still wrapped in a thick fog, unable to see any way out. Feeling the violent blood and qi fluctuations coming from Tu Feng's body, the Immortal Ascension Boundary Leader's expression changed greatly as he roared, "Fuck, the Yang family's blood warriors are all madmen. That's my Mad Tyrant blood skill. Stop him." Mad Tyrant blood skill was a unique martial skill that the Yang family blood warriors cultivated. Using this skill, a blood warrior's vitality would temporarily increase by 2 to 3 times. Although their realm wouldn't change, both their defensive and offensive power would be greatly enhanced. This was similar to Yang Kai's blood force after becoming the demon race. However, the Mad Tyrant blood skill wasn't as good as becoming the demon race because using it would result in a backlash. A blood warrior overdrew their vitality in order to enhance their vitality. Once the Mad Tyrant blood skill was used, a blood warrior would become invincible for a short time. But as time passed, they would become extremely weak. The battle had only just begun, but Tu Feng had already decisively used this forbidden move, which clearly showed how anxious he was in his heart, greatly startling the 3 Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters. They never thought that Tu Feng would be so eager to protect his master, not caring whether he would be injured or not. Knowing that they didn't have much time left, the 3 of them didn't hold back and fiercely attacked Tang Yuxian. He wanted to defeat her quickly. Then he would deal with Tu Feng. However, Tang Yuxian was still a member of the Blood Warriors, so her strength was indisputable. Summoning all of her artifacts, she was able to single-handedly hold the 3 blood warriors in place, preventing them from moving. Quickly! The Immortal Ascension Boundary 8th Stage Master saw that he couldn't break through Tang Yuxian's defenses. He hurriedly roared at the other side. On the other side, the middle-aged man leading the group that was chasing Yang Kai was an Immortal Ascension Boundary 3rd Stage Master. Behind him was an Immortal Ascension Boundary 1st Stage Master and 2 Yuan Qi 9th Stage Masters. Such a lineup was more than enough to easily kill any true element Boundary 7th Stage cultivator. But that did not include Yang Kai. Hearing a roar from the other side, the expression of the middle-aged man leading this group became cold as he hurriedly urged his soul skill towards Yang Kai's back. An invisible force pierced through the air and drilled directly into Yang Kai's mind. Yang Kai, who had been running away, suddenly trembled. Suddenly, his true qi stopped flowing, and he swayed as he fell from the sky. "Umph!" The middle-aged man coldly snorted, his figure flashing as he and the others quickly surrounded Yang Kai. "This is the Yang family's young lord?" The Immortal Ascension Boundary 1st Stage Master stared contemptuously at Yang Kai, who had fallen to the ground, his face twisted in pain, disdainfully curling his lips. "He's nothing special. I thought this time there would be some twists and turns, but who would have thought it would be so easy?" The middle-aged man heavily snorted, "You underestimate the Yang family too much. Right now he is still weak. If he is allowed to grow to the same realm as you, I'm afraid even I won't be able to win." The Immortal Ascension Boundary 1st Stage Master showed a look of disapproval, but he did not refute, instead just nodding. "Unfortunately, he is still just an Yuan Qi cultivator. He is destined to be easily taken down." An Immortal Ascension Boundary Master dealing with an Yuan Qi cultivator was too easy. If the latter did not have an artifact to defend his soul, he would not be able to resist the attack of a soul skill. Therefore, the young lords and young ladies of great families and great forces would at least be equipped with such an artifact, and with the capital and heritage of these forces, they would have enough money to arm their important figures. Don't talk nonsense, hurry up and kill him, I'm afraid the situation will worsen. The middle-aged man saw that Yang Kai was unable to resist, his eyes somewhat dim, no longer being long-winded, and lightly ordered. The Immortal Ascension Boundary First Stage Master shrugged his shoulders indifferently and grinned, "Good, I'll take care of the offending." Saying so, he picked up his weapon and slowly walked in front of Yang Kai, stretched out his foot, stepped on Yang Kai's chest, and aimed his weapon at Yang Kai's neck, then viciously stabbed down. Yang Kai's eyes were dull, and his expression was pained, as if he really did not have the strength to resist and could only wait to be slaughtered. At that moment, an amazing light bloomed from the pair of dull eyes, and a purple light flashed, directly rushing into the Immortal Ascension Boundary First Stage cultivator's mind. A cold, gloomy, evil, and violent aura instantly exploded in his knowledge sea. The weapon in the middle-aged man's hand was less than 3 inches away from Yang Kai's neck. This man still had a casual smile on his face. However, he was no longer able to stab down with his weapon. After the soul skill he had obtained from the evil cavern soul evil spirit exploded in his mind, the middle-aged man instantly froze in place, only to feel a chill in his head as his entire knowledge sea suddenly froze. Yang Kai suddenly launched an attack. One after another, purple light blasted out in all directions, creating a circle of ripples that wrapped around the Immortal Ascension Boundary Third Stage middle-aged man and the other 2 Yuan Qi Ninth Stage young men. The middle-aged man was attacked and reflexively retreated, his eyes trembling violently, almost unable to believe what he was seeing. The 2 Yuan Qi cultivators, on the other hand, screamed miserably, their hands clutching their heads as they knelt on the ground, groaning in pain. Hong. A muffled sound rang out as Yang Kai's fist smashed into the chest of the Immortal Ascension Boundary First Stage cultivator, causing his back to bulge outwards at a speed visible to the naked eye. It was as if all the ribs in his chest had been broken, the broken bones piercing into his heart and lungs as the violent true Yang Yuan Qi exploded inside his body. This man didn't even make a sound before his eyes dimmed. In the blink of an eye, an Immortal Ascension Boundary First Stage cultivator had been killed. Yang Kai leapt up from the ground like a gust of wind, arriving next to the 2 Yuan Qi Ninth Stage young men, his expression as cold as a knife, grabbing their heads with both hands and twisting them. 2 crisp snapping sounds rang out. The 2 young men's heads were twisted 180 degrees, their necks broken, and they fell to the ground. The middle-aged man had just regained his footing when Yang Kai had already killed 3 people in a row. 4 pairs of eyes stared at each other, Yang Kai's expression indifferent, a strange smile on his face, while the middle-aged man's face was pale, his eyes filled with horror. Just because of a moment of carelessness, 3 of his masters had been killed. What was even more inconceivable to him was that he had clearly felt his soul skill hit this Yang family young lord, but why was he completely unharmed? There were no traces of a soul-type artifact on his body just now. Instead, his soul skill had clearly penetrated his head. How could he possibly be unharmed? Even if he was a peak Immortal Ascension Boundary cultivator, wouldn't he be affected by such an attack? But looking at this young man's performance, it seemed that his attack just now wasn't even qualified to scratch his itch. Also, what was that cold, sinister, violent, and evil divine soul attack just now? Little brat, you dare play the pig to eat the tiger. The middle-aged man roared angrily. Yang Kai sneered, disdainfully curling his lips. So what? Yes, so what? You ambushed me here, using numbers to bully me, using your strength to bully the weak, so why can't others play the pig to eat the tiger? What kind of logic is this? The middle-aged man's face was extremely pale, but he suddenly sneered, Good, you really are a descendant of the Yang family, all of you are extraordinary. But you're doomed to die today. Yang Kai carefully observed the middle-aged man's expression and found that even though he had spoken such harsh words, he didn't seem to have any intention of attacking. Instead, the middle-aged man was staring at him with a look of dread. Yang Kai knew that the brief exchange just now had left this man scratching his head. This man was obviously a cautious person, so he was acting so cautiously. "You're not my opponent," Yang Kai coldly declared, not panicking. The middle-aged man was stunned, seemingly not having expected such words from Yang Kai, his expression becoming cold. "Even if you're a member of the Yang family, your words are too arrogant. I'm an immortal ascension boundary master." "So, what if you're an immortal ascension boundary master?" Yang Kai actually took the initiative to step forward, his expression calm, as if he didn't put this middle-aged man in his heart. "I just killed an immortal ascension boundary master right under your nose." The middle-aged man was stunned, staring blankly at Yang Kai, suddenly becoming somewhat confused, an expression of not knowing what to do appearing on his face. "Not only that, man, but even you, an immortal ascension boundary third stage cultivator, are destined to die at my hands today." Yang Kai sneered. "Unfortunately, although your cultivation is good, your understanding of soul skills isn't very profound. You probably haven't cultivated them for long, right? Otherwise, how could you not have noticed that I wasn't injured at all? In fact, I'm not afraid to tell you, my spiritual energy is even stronger than yours." Nonsense. The middle-aged man sneered, his mind calming down, obviously not believing such nonsense. But before he could finish speaking, an extremely tyrannical divine sense suddenly swept over him. The strength of this divine sense was comparable to that of an average immortal ascension boundary 7th or 8th stage cultivator, even comparable to those at the peak of the immortal ascension boundary. No, it was already comparable to the divine sense of a peak immortal ascension boundary master. So far, the middle-aged man had only felt such a powerful divine sense from 3 or 5 people, and all of those people were at the peak of the immortal ascension boundary. His mind, which had just stabilized, once again trembled violently. Chapter 386. Just as the middle-aged man was in a daze, Yang Kai made his move. 2 beast roars rang out as the white tiger and divine ox charged forward. Grasping a crimson sword in his hand, Yang Kai sent out a several dozen-meter-long sword chi towards the middle-aged man. At the same time, a cloud of flower petals suddenly flew out from Yang Kai's body, rotating around him like sharp blades as they shot towards the middle-aged man. A purple light burst forth again as Yang Kai's soul skill shone brilliantly. At this moment, Yang Kai had used all the conventional means at his disposal. Sensing the extremely terrifying power coming towards him, the middle-aged man let out a strange cry. Finally, he didn't dare to be careless in the slightest as he dodged the sword chi in a sorry state. However, he was entangled with the white tiger and divine ox, and before he could disperse the 2 beast spirits, the 1,000-blossoming blood begonia that was wrapped in the fragrance of flowers had already completely enveloped him. Kong. The middle-aged man madly pushed his yuan chi, a shockwave visible to the naked eye spreading outwards with him as the center. A fierce wind rolled up, containing his own strength, blocking the attack of the 1,000-blossoming blood begonia and the 2 beast phantoms. Leaping into the air, the middle-aged man actually didn't retreat but instead rushed forward towards Yang Kai. In the end, he was still an immortal ascension boundary 3rd stage master. Although he had been momentarily affected by Yang Kai's words and had allowed Yang Kai to seize the initiative, his instincts and combat experience allowed him to choose the most appropriate way to fight. This young man was undoubtedly very strong, his combat effectiveness far exceeding his own Yuan Qi 7th-stage strength. However, the middle-aged man was keenly aware that the soul skill Yang Kai displayed was somewhat ethereal, unlike that of an ordinary immortal ascension boundary cultivator. Strictly speaking, it was like a tree without roots, water without a source. Although it was powerful, it wasn't terrifying. The reason for this was because Yang Kai only had his divine sense. Although he could use his soul skill, he didn't have a knowledge sea. Once his knowledge sea was formed, the full power of his soul skill would be fully displayed. Although the middle-aged man didn't know the reason, he still made the right choice. As long as he could resist Yang Kai's soul attack. In the end, he was still an Yuan Qi cultivator. Even though Yang Kai possessed a top-grade artifact, and even though his martial skills were profound, his cultivation was still several realms lower than Yang Kai's. It wasn't necessarily impossible to kill him. In a trance, the middle-aged man had already stabilized his footing. His hands formed a seal, and a burst of lightning flashed and thunder roared. It was as if his Yuan Qi could summon the miraculous power of thunder and lightning. Kacha, bolts of lightning thicker than a person's thighs struck down from the sky. Electric snakes swam in the air, wrapping Yang Kai in layers. He was the most powerful of the 4 people who were chasing after Yang Kai, and the moment he made a move, his aura was extraordinary. Yang Kai couldn't avoid it in time and was entangled by the drifting lightning. In an instant, it was difficult for him to move, and even his body felt numb. With a cold and stern expression, the true Yang Yuan Qi in his body came out and formed a seemingly thin defensive shield around his body, blocking the attacks of the electric arcs. He swung the Shura sword in his hand. Beam after beam of sword qi slashed out fiercely, and the scattered 1,000-blossoming blood begonia gathered once again and attacked the middle-aged man ferociously. The middle-aged man didn't dare to hold back and quickly pulled out a small hammer. This hammer flashed with lightning. Once this hammer was in his hand, the power of his lightning bolts actually increased again. The 2 beast phantoms rushed forward, but were blocked by the lightning bolts again and again, unable to advance or retreat. The 2 of them, one in the air and one on the ground, were separated by less than 100 meters. Using all of his means, for a time the 2 were evenly matched. The middle-aged man's brow furrowed, secretly feeling that the situation wasn't good. This time, they had taken a great risk in order to kill the Yang family young lord. In their plan, once they succeeded, they would immediately retreat. Even if the Yang family young lord had 2 blood warriors with him, they wouldn't be afraid. However, they had never expected that this Yang family young lord would actually be so powerful. Not only had he killed 3 masters whose cultivation was higher than his, but he was also able to fight evenly with an Immortal Ascension Boundary 3rd Stage Master. The 2 artifacts he used were extraordinary, both of them heaven-grade top rank. His martial skills were exquisite, his Yuan Qi was pure, and he even had a soul skill. The middle-aged man quickly estimated that it would take him at least half an hour to kill this young man. And this was in the most ideal environment where no one could interfere. Now that time was of the essence, how could the other party give him half an hour? What's more, whether this Yang family young lord still had cards up his sleeve, the middle-aged man didn't know. This time, he was afraid he had lost. The middle-aged man became anxious. At that moment, on the other side of the battlefield, a loud roar suddenly rang out. In the middle of the battlefield, the fog surrounding the 3 Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters quickly dissipated under this roar, revealing Tu Feng's glowing red figure. His face was filled with a terrifying grimace, and the scars on his face seemed to come alive. Mad Tyrant Blood Skill. Yu Xian, leave this to me. Tu Feng said faintly, his cold eyes glaring towards the 3 Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters. Tang Yu Xian didn't say anything, instead leaping out of the battlefield and quickly flying towards Yang Kai. The middle-aged man who was fighting Yang Kai saw Tang Yu Xian's figure fly over, so how could he dare remain? He was just an Immortal Ascension Boundary 3rd Stage Master. In this plan, he was only responsible for killing the Yang family young lord. He didn't have the qualifications to fight the Blood Warriors. In a panic, he used all his means to obstruct Yang Kai for a moment before fleeing without looking back. Just as he left, Tang Yu Xian arrived beside Yang Kai and asked anxiously, "Little lord, are you hurt?" Yang Kai waved his hand and sent out 1,000 flower petals towards the middle-aged man, but it was too late, so he hurriedly shouted, "Catch him and bring him back." Tang Yu Xian was taken aback for a moment but didn't hesitate. Her tender body flickered and disappeared. A moment later, Tang Yu Xian flew back with the middle-aged man. In front of Tang Yu Xian, an Immortal Ascension Boundary 3rd Stage Master wasn't even qualified to carry her shoes. With Yuan Qi imprisoned, Tang Yuxian didn't even spare him a glance and simply threw him in front of Yang Kai. The middle-aged man's face was ashen as he stared at Tang Yuxian in horror, seemingly only now realizing the horror of a blood warrior. Smiling bitterly, he turned his eyes back to Yang Kai and said, "Young Master Yang, you won't get anything out of me." Yang Kai grinned. She calmly walked towards him. When she was in front of him, she looked down at him and said indifferently, "When did I say that I wanted to ask you anything?" As soon as his voice fell, the blood-red sword in his hand drew a beautiful arc. The middle-aged man who had been imprisoned by Yuan Qi wore a stunned look on his face. His head rolled to the ground. "Those who know my secret either die or become one of my people." Yang Kai snorted. Tang Yuxian suddenly trembled. Staring at Yang Kai in horror, a thoughtful expression appeared on her face. Yang Kai's words seemed to have a hidden meaning. What secret did this middle-aged man know about the little lord? He had actually so decisively silenced him. What about her? Had she also inadvertently learned some of the little lord's secrets? Just as she was contemplating, Yang Kai had already put away his sword and said lightly, "Go help Qiu Yimeng and Luo Xiaoman, N." Tang Yuxian nodded, not daring to neglect and dashing out again. Yang Kai stood in place and observed for a while, quickly discovering that although Qiu Yimeng and Luo Xiaoman were not the enemy's opponents, they were also unharmed. The other party obviously didn't intend to do anything to them, only leaving 2 people behind to block them. When Tang Yuxian arrived, the 2 people didn't seem to realize the seriousness of the situation. Before they could react, they had been killed. On the other side, Tu Feng and the 3 Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters had disappeared, probably because the other party knew they couldn't win and didn't want to confront the Blood Warrior who had used his Mad Tyrant blood skill. Tu Feng was in hot pursuit. A moment later, Qiu Yimeng and Luo Xiaoman, under the leadership of Tang Yuxian, came to meet up with Yang Kai. The 2 women looked a little nervous and worried, as well as a little scared. Looking at Yang Kai suspiciously, Qiu Yimeng asked, "How come you're not injured at all? Didn't I see you being knocked down from the sky by them?" Hearing her say this, Tang Yuxian suddenly became worried and swept her eyes over Yang Kai. A trace of concern flashed across her beautiful eyes. When Yang Kai was in danger just now, she had been busy dealing with the 3 opposing masters, so naturally she hadn't been aware of the situation here. Qiu Yimeng was different. She knew in advance that her life was not in danger, so naturally she was paying more attention to Yang Kai. "Little lord, are you really not injured?" Tang Yuxian looked at him nervously, seemingly afraid he was deceiving her. "It's just a minor injury, nothing serious." Yang Kai responded casually. In fact, he didn't even have any external wounds, but in such a dangerous situation, if he said he was unscathed, it would only make them more suspicious. Qiu Yimeng slowly shook her head with a dignified expression. "I can't see through you more and more." Glancing at the 3 corpses on the ground, Tang Yuxian couldn't help feeling shocked. Although these people were already dead, she could still feel that these 3 people's cultivations were much higher than Yang Kai's, one of them even being an Immortal Ascension Boundary Master. However, Yang Kai, without any outside help, had killed all 3 of them. He had even been entangled with an Immortal Ascension Boundary 3rd Stage Master for a long time. "Enough about me, Yuxian, how are you?" Yang Kai obviously didn't want to talk about this topic and turned to look at Tang Yuxian. Qiu Yimeng and Luo Xiaoman suddenly realized that Tang Yuxian seemed to be seriously injured. Her clothes were somewhat tattered, and there was still some blood at the corner of her mouth that had not yet dried up. The true essence in her body was tumbling, and it was obvious that she had suffered some internal injuries. On her snow-white arm, there was a long wound. Although the blood had stopped flowing, her clothes were dark red. With her strength, if she hadn't been entangled with 3 opponents by herself, she wouldn't have ended up in such a sorry state. The most important thing was that time was too tight, so she had to make some sacrifices, allowing Tu Feng to use his Mad Tyrant blood skill so she could rescue Yang Kai. If given enough time, she and Tu Feng could have defeated these 3 masters without suffering any injuries, or even killed them. However, this matter was related to Yang Kai's safety, so she and Tu Feng didn't have much time to waste, So even if she knew that fighting 3 enemies at once was not a good idea, Tang Yuxian still didn't hesitate. Even if he knew that using his Mad Tyrant blood skill would overdraft his vitality, Tu Feng didn't hesitate. The loyalty of a blood warrior was vividly demonstrated in this battle. "I'm fine, little lord doesn't need to worry." Tang Yuxian shook her head gently. Chapter 387. Everyone waited for less than half a stick of incense worth of time before Tu Feng returned, covered in blood. The murderous intent radiating from his body was so thick that it was almost tangible, like a god of death descending upon the world. Even Qiu Yimeng couldn't help feeling a chill run down her spine. In Tu Feng's hands were 2 heads belonging to the 2 masters who had previously entangled him and Tang Yuxian. Hurrying back, Tu Feng threw the 2 heads to the ground and said in a cold voice, "All of them committed suicide, 1 ran away." During his pursuit, the Immortal Ascension Boundary 7th Stage and 5th Stage Masters had immediately bit their tongues to commit suicide after being severely injured. Only the strongest one had managed to escape in a panic, barely managing to escape with his life. "The people here are also dead." Tang Yuxian's eyes flashed coldly. "Interesting." Yang Kai's expression became cold as a strange grin appeared on his face. "The person behind this group of people has some means. Otherwise, these assassins wouldn't have bitten their tongues to commit suicide at the last moment, preferring to lose their lives rather than reveal any information. Along the way, only the Lu family knows about young lord's whereabouts." Tu Feng's face was filled with murderous intent as he said. Tu Feng was a little angry. This time, the assassination had taken place right under his and Tang Yuxian's noses. The other party had used some kind of method to completely mask everyone's auras, so even the 2 blood warriors hadn't noticed. If it weren't for Yang Kai's vigilance at the critical moment, perhaps this time they would have succeeded. Under the protection of 2 powerful blood warriors, the Yang family young lord had still been killed. If such news were to spread out, the entire blood hall would lose all face. The entire blood warrior hall would lose all face and the 2 of them would be punished by their families. They might even be asked to commit suicide as an apology. This was a very real possibility. In other words, Yang Kai's vigilance had not only saved his own life, but also saved both his and Tang Yuxian's lives. Tu Feng was grateful but at the same time ashamed. He immediately linked the culprit to the Lu family. It wasn't that he had maliciously harmed them, but because he was currently using his Mad Tyrant blood skill, his murderous intent was surging. His fighting spirit was so strong that it was impossible for him to think calmly. In addition, the Lu family's attitude towards Yang Kai a few days ago had annoyed him, so naturally he had taken this opportunity to vent. Hearing this, Qiu Yimeng's expression changed greatly as she hurriedly said, "Lu Liang would never do such a suicidal thing." Tu Feng didn't care about Qiu Yimeng's identity or face and coldly snorted, "Lu Liang won't, but it's hard to say whether the rest of the Lu family won't." Qiu Yimeng suddenly froze and didn't know what to say. She just stared at Yang Kai, hoping he wouldn't be as unreasonable as Tu Feng. Yang Kai didn't say anything. He just frowned, looked around, and then looked at the battlefield and the corpses lying on the ground. Suddenly, he looked up at the silver blood golden feather eagle in the sky and said calmly, "It has nothing to do with the Liu family. I'm afraid the eagle has exposed its whereabouts. We were too careless this time." Hearing him say this, Qiu Yimeng couldn't help breathing a sigh of relief. Although Lu Liang's actions last time had made Qiu Yimeng somewhat unhappy, she had no choice but to accept it. But no matter what, the Lu family still relied on the Qiu family to develop. Over the years, the Lu family had also provided the Qiu family with many good things, so as the young miss of the Qiu family, she had the obligation and responsibility to protect the Lu family to the best of her ability. "This bastard!" Tang Yuxian grit her teeth. He glared at the golden-feathered eagle circling in the sky. Yang Kai said lightly, "For so many years, no one has dared to have any ideas about the Yang family's young lords, so whether it was me or you, none of us would have thought that this would happen. Learn from your mistakes." As he spoke, he blew a loud whistle, and the golden feather eagle immediately swooped down. Smiling strangely, Yang Kai glanced over at Qiu Yimeng and said, Although this time it has nothing to do with the Lu family, I hope that today's events will reach Lu Liang's ears, and that the Qiu family pass on the message. Qiu Yimeng didn't respond for a moment, not understanding why Yang Kai would suddenly say such a thing. Her brow furrowed slightly as she thought about it for a moment, but soon her heart filled with resentment as she grit her teeth and spat, "You bastard, how can you still think about such things at this time? You're really full of evil ideas. Even if you want to pluck feathers from a goose, you don't have to go to such an extent. I really admire you." Humph. They asked for it. Do they really think this young lord is a pile of mud? This time I'll teach them a lesson. Yang Kai sneered. When everyone heard him say this, they realized that he actually cared about the Lu family's attitude towards him. He may not care about the Lu family's support, but he wouldn't allow others to look down on him. Those who looked down on him would pay the price sooner or later. However, the two of them were speaking in riddles, causing the two blood warriors and Luo Xiaoman to be somewhat confused. "Elder Sister Qiu, what do you mean by that?" Luo Xiaoman was extremely naive and straightforward, so she couldn't help asking. Tu Feng and Tang Yuxian also looked at her eagerly, wondering what kind of mystery was behind this that would cause Qiu Yimeng to despise Yang Kai so much. Qiu Yimeng smiled bitterly and turned to Tu Feng and Tang Yuxian. "I told you that this young lord of yours is a vengeful person, but you didn't believe me." Let me put it this way. Although the Lu family really isn't responsible for this incident, Yang Kai has only stopped by the Lu family residence once. If news of his attack today were to reach Lu Liang's ears, how do you think he would react? Tu Feng was stunned for a moment before suddenly realizing Lu Liang would definitely be on tenterhooks, afraid that the little lord would suspect him of leaking his whereabouts. In order to prove his innocence, Lu Liang would definitely come to the central capital to clarify things with the little lord. Since he has come to clarify things, he would definitely bring some gifts. Tang Yuxian covered her mouth as she stared at Yang Kai in amazement. She hadn't expected him to have such crooked thoughts at that moment. Bringing gifts was the main point. Moreover, this is a message my Qiu family sent. Qiu Yimeng gritted her teeth. Qiu Yimeng ground her teeth in anger. Lu Liang will definitely think that my Qiu family is willing to act as a peacemaker, so as long as he prepared enough gifts, Yang Kai will definitely not blame him. Your young lord is clearly using this as a pretext to make a fuss, creating something out of nothing in order to amass wealth. Both Tu Feng and Tang Yuxian stared at Yang Kai in amazement and admiration. This kind of clever mind, the two of them couldn't understand. Having just encountered a life-threatening situation, an average person would be in a state of shock, enjoying the joy of surviving a calamity. Their young lord, on the other hand, was not only calm and composed, but also immediately set his sights on an unrelated person. Wasn't his brain working a bit too fast? The Lu family this time was really an unexpected disaster. For a moment, the two blood warriors couldn't help feeling some sympathy for Lu Liang. They really didn't know what kind of reaction the Lu family patriarch would have once he learned the truth. Even if he knew, he would probably pinch his nose and admit defeat. Who told Yang Kai to only stop at his house? Tell Lu Liang that he doesn't need to come over, just bring the gifts. Yang Kai added lightly. Qiu Yimeng snorted, really too lazy to deal with him. Let's get out of here first. Yang Kai's expression sank as he waved his hand. The 5 cloud-treading colts, which were not easy to cultivate and were extremely valuable, had long since been swept away by the torrent, leaving the 5 of them no choice but to fly. Tang Yuxian's injuries weren't serious, but they weren't light either. As for Tu Feng, he wasn't injured, but after an hour, the effects of his mad tyrant blood skill had worn off, causing his vitality to suddenly weaken. If the two blood warriors wanted to fully recover, it would take at least 10 days to half a month. Having just encountered an ambush, no one dared to act too ostentatiously. Inside a mountain pass, the 5 of them stopped to rest. Yang Kai personally went out to catch some food and brought it back, which made the two blood warriors feel more and more uneasy, but at the same time, they also felt grateful. Later that night, the 5 of them sat together and grilled some game. The atmosphere was a bit dull. The two blood warriors felt they had failed in their duties and were too embarrassed to speak, so when they looked towards Yang Kai, their eyes were filled with guilt. Qiu Yimeng was secretly annoyed with Yang Kai for taking advantage of the situation and naturally didn't pay any attention to him. Luo Xiaoman also saw the awkward atmosphere and closed her mouth like a well-behaved rabbit. Only Yang Kai was sitting by the bonfire, his eyes indifferent as he stared at the flickering flames. He was recalling what had happened during the day in his mind, connecting all the dots and speculating about the possibilities of what had just happened. After a long time, Yang Kai straightened up and suddenly said, "You don't have to feel guilty, this time it wasn't directed at me." "Little Lord." Tang Yuxian pursed her lips, looking somewhat ashamed. Yang Kai waved his hand dismissively, "I'm not trying to comfort you, this time it really wasn't directed at me. Perhaps they found out about our movements a few days in advance, so they set up an ambush in the river. They knew that if we wanted to cross the Lan River, we would need to find a ferry, and crossing the river with a ferry gave them the opportunity to do so." Listening to him speak so seriously, the five of them couldn't help but listen carefully. Their deployment of forces was very targeted. The 3 strongest blood warriors were there to contain the 2 blood warriors. The rest of them were responsible for killing the Yang family disciples. Those people were quite large in number, and their strength was also quite good. However, when they were chasing me, they didn't show any deep hatred, so they had no grievances with me. Tu Feng nodded and said, "During the battle, the strongest young lord also said something. It seems that they were targeting all the Yang family young lords. They just happened to encounter me. If any other Yang family disciple had passed by, they would have also been assassinated." Tu Feng and Tang Yuxian couldn't help secretly rejoicing. Fortunately, it was Yang Kai who had passed by. If it had been any other Yang family young lord who had passed by, with the skill and number of assassins, how could they have survived? Did you notice the strength distribution of those people? Yang Kai's mouth curled into a strange smile as he asked pointedly. Strength distribution? Tu Feng frowned. N1 Immortal Ascension Boundary 8th Stage, 1 7th Stage, 1 5th Stage, 1 3rd Stage, 1 1st Stage. Yang Kai grinned meaningfully. In addition, all of them were Yuan Qi boundary masters. Didn't you notice anything wrong with this kind of immortal ascension boundary strength distribution? Chapter 388. With Yang Kai's reminder, everyone suddenly reacted. "There's a gap." Tu Feng quickly said. "There's a gap." Yang Kai nodded lightly. The masters of a great force should be distributed in a stepped pattern. Since they have immortal ascension boundary masters at the 1st, 3rd, 5th, and 7th stage, there should be masters at the 2nd, 4th, and 6th stage. Assassinating a Yang family disciple is a matter of great importance. If there really was a great force trying to stir up trouble, they would definitely have dispatched all of their masters without leaving anyone behind. Pausing for a moment, Yang Kai asked, "Tu Feng Yuxian, when you were fighting with those 3, did you notice any signs of their sect?" Both of them shook their heads, Tu Feng saying, "Those people were very cautious and didn't use any special martial skills, for fear that we would be able to see through them. However, I always felt that they weren't very familiar with each other because their cooperation wasn't so tacit and intimate." Of course they weren't familiar with each other. If I'm not mistaken, they aren't from the same great force at all. Yang Kai coldly snorted. No great force would dare to act against the Yang family. What do you mean? These people, they were a gathering of several great forces, and then they selected a few masters to investigate the movements of the golden feather eagle, speculate our position, and then set up an ambush here. Qiu Yimeng nodded in agreement. If that's the case, then it explains why there is a gap in the distribution of their strength. When the masters of several great forces gathered together and selected a few masters from them, of course there would be such a situation. Little Lord's observation is quite good. Tu Feng chuckled. Yang Kai's eyes flashed and he suddenly smiled strangely. Looking at them, he said, "Since it was a gathering of masters from several great forces, it's absolutely impossible for there to be only a few of them." The 2 blood warriors' faces suddenly changed as they asked in shock, "You mean they still have a backup plan?" Yang Kai shook his head. "No. The ones who ambushed us were only those people, but have you ever thought about what the rest of the masters were doing besides them? The several blood warriors thought for a while before suddenly feeling shocked. He looked at Yang Kai in horror. Yang Kai's eyes became cold. It looks like my brothers won't have a peaceful journey. This deployment is aimed at all the Yang family disciples. What a big move. If Yang Kai's speculation was correct, then this was truly too big of a deal. The masters of several forces split up to track down the whereabouts of the Yang family disciples, intercepting them midway. The golden feather eagle hovering above the Yang family young lord's head was the beacon that pointed them in the right direction. This time, Yang Kai was more scared than hurt. But what about the other Yang family young lords? Could someone really have been intercepted and killed on the way? To dare to do such a thing, the person behind the scenes must have extraordinary means and guts. Your Yang family has offended too many people, you only have yourself to blame. Qiu Yimeng sneered. It's too early to conclude that it was my enemy's doing. Yang Kai slowly shook his head. The inheritance war's implications are too great. Qiu Yimeng stared at him blankly, seemingly having seen through his thoughts. The family will investigate, we don't need to think too much about it. Yang Kai suddenly smiled lightly, standing up and walking over to the side, calling out, Tu Feng Yuxian, come over here. The two blood warriors stared blankly. Quickly getting up, they chased after him. Qiu Yimeng and Luo Xiaoman both curled their lips, acting so mysterious. Walking into the darkness, Yang Kai stopped and turned around to look at the two blood warriors. Both Tu Feng and Tang Yuxian's hearts were in turmoil, not knowing why Yang Kai had called them out. Today's events made them feel extremely guilty. Although they had secretly resolved to be careful on the road ahead, what had already happened. Little Lord won't reprimand us, right? Tu Feng and Tang Yuxian didn't say a word, their hearts filled with bitterness, their faces turning red in the darkness. How are your injuries? Just as the two of them were wondering, Yang Kai suddenly asked. Tu Feng froze. He had never expected that Yang Kai would actually ask about this. Hearing Yang Kai's concerned inquiry, both he and Tang Yuxian couldn't help feeling some ripples in their hearts. Quickly replying, my body is a bit weak, I can only exert about 60% of my strength. Yuxian is a bit better off than me, but she also has some internal injuries. If she wants to recover, it will take a few days. Saying so, he quickly added, Little Lord can rest assured, Yuxian and I will escort you safely back to the family, even if it costs our lives. Tang Yuxian nodded. We won't be so careless again. When we return to the central capital, we will ask for forgiveness from the family. Yang Kai nodded slightly, not saying anything. After a while, he stretched out his hand and handed out 2 pills, one for each of you. Now take them in front of me. The two blood warriors were startled, not knowing why Yang Kai was speaking so seriously, but they also knew that Yang Kai wouldn't harm them, so without hesitation, they took the pills and swallowed them. These seemed to be ordinary healing pills, at best, only Earth-grade top rank. The two blood warriors tasted the pills and immediately judged their grade, feeling a bit suspicious. Why did the little lord give them the feeling that he was giving them some kind of extraordinary pills? Although they were surprised in their hearts, they didn't show it on their faces. Even if Yang Kai had given them an ordinary grade pill, it was still a sign of his sincerity. You can think of it as me trying to win you over, or you can think of it as me being afraid of death. On the way back, I'll have to rely on the two of you to protect me, so I also hope you can recover quickly. Yang Kai said with a smile. The two blood warriors felt even more strange. How could a single Earth-grade top-rank healing pill allow them to recover quickly? What kind of riddle was the little lord playing at? Both of them shook their heads secretly, puzzled. Go back, meditate and absorb the medicinal efficacies, don't waste them. Yang Kai waved his hand. Yes. Tu Feng and Tang Yuxian both nodded and turned around, but after taking a few steps, they suddenly stopped. The two of them glanced at each other, understanding the meaning in each other's eyes, quickly turning back to face Yang Kai. What's wrong? Yang Kai looked at the two of them curiously, not knowing what they wanted to say. Little Lord. Tu Feng's expression became solemn as he said, this time, in the inheritance war, if the family allows the blood warriors to participate, then Yuxian and I hope we can follow Little Lord's lead. We hope little lord won't think our strength is too low. Yang Kai's eyes narrowed as he stared straight at Tu Feng, chuckling after a long time. I'd be happy to. Tu Feng and Tang Yuxian both smiled happily and quickly knelt on the ground, earnestly saying, then these two subordinates will await little lord's arrival in the Blood Warrior Hall. I'll be there. Yang Kai nodded solemnly. Tu Feng and Tang Yuxian then got up and left, following Yang Kai's instructions, quickly sitting down cross-legged and circulating their secret arts to refine the medicinal efficacies. Looking at the direction the two of them were meditating, Yang Kai's mood fluctuated, but after a long time, he couldn't help smiling. Finally, these two blood warriors have been settled. Along the way, although Yang Kai had used some deliberate methods, most of them were just casual performances. All kinds of strange and mysterious things had truly conquered Tu Feng and Tang Yuxian, making them want to pledge their loyalty. Although it was still unknown whether the blood warriors would participate in this time's inheritance war, Yang Kai still had to plan ahead. If the blood warriors were really allowed to participate, he would soon have two powerful allies on his side. When Tu Feng called them subordinates, his words were sincere, without the slightest hint of dissatisfaction. This was the first time the two blood warriors had called themselves subordinates in front of Yang Kai, which meant they really wanted to help Yang Kai participate in the inheritance war. Looking up at Star Field, Yang Kai smiled with relief, full of expectations for this time's inheritance war. The night passed peacefully. At dawn the next day, Tu Feng and Tang Yuxian both opened their eyes from meditation and glanced at each other, both seeing a deep joy and surprise in the other's eyes. After a night of meditation, both of their injuries had completely healed. Originally, it would have taken them at least 10 days to half a month to fully recover, but in just one night they had fully recovered. Recalling all the strange and mysterious things that had happened when they were refining and absorbing the Earth-grade top-rank healing pill last night, both of them couldn't help feeling like they had fallen through the clouds. That was clearly just an Earth-grade top-rank pill. Normally, the two blood warriors wouldn't even spare it a glance. If it hadn't been given to them by Yang Kai, how could they have taken it? Both of them already had heaven-grade top-rank healing pills in their possession. However, after refining this Earth-grade high-grade pill, which they had not taken seriously, it suddenly gave birth to a miraculous medicinal effect that surged to the point of disbelief. The medicinal effect wandered through their meridians, flesh, and blood, and not only did it heal all the injuries they had suffered this time, even the hidden injuries they had suffered in previous battles were healed. Blood warriors were born to fight. Every blood warrior that matured had experienced hundreds of life and death battles. It could be said that every blood warrior's body was riddled with hidden injuries. These injuries couldn't be healed with pills. Only with a combination of medicines and a long period of meditation could there be a possibility of full recovery. But as a blood warrior, how could they have the time to meditate? Tu Feng had hidden injuries. When he circulated his yuan qi, he would feel a slight tingling pain in his abdomen, but he had already ignored this subtle pain. Tang Yuxian also had hidden injuries. Every time she became angry, her heart would ache. This was because she hadn't been able to clean up after being poisoned. These internal injuries were very subtle and wouldn't affect their combat strength or the circulation of their true essence. However, both of them knew that although they wouldn't be affected by these internal injuries right now, as time passed, sooner or later they would die from these subtle internal injuries. But now, the two of them clearly felt that all the hidden injuries they had suffered in their previous battles had disappeared. How could this be possible with just an Earth-grade top-rank pill? In an instant, both of them understood that the little lord must have hidden something in those two Earth-grade top-rank pills, which was why they had such a miraculous effect. And that kind of unknown thing must be priceless and incomparably rare. For a time, the guilt and gratitude of the two blood warriors became even stronger. Chapter 389. Yang Kai had long since woken up, and it could even be said that he hadn't slept all night. The two blood warriors were refining the medicinal efficacies to heal their wounds. Qiu Yimeng and Luo Xiaoman were both women, so the task of monitoring the surroundings naturally fell to them. Looking at Yang Kai, the two blood warriors couldn't help feeling a subtle warmth in their hearts. Just as they were about to open their mouths to express their thanks, Yang Kai glanced at them faintly and asked, "Which force does this area belong to?" Tu Feng thought about it for a moment before replying, "If I remember correctly, this place should be within the sphere of influence of Tianyuan City." Tianyuan City was the name of a city and also the name of a force. What kind of force is Tianyuan City? Yang Kai frowned. A first-class force. Why does Little Lord ask about this? Tu Feng didn't understand why he was suddenly so concerned about Tianyuan City. Yang Kai flashed his white fangs and grinned at him, a hint of slyness flashing across his face. Qiu Yimeng opened her eyes and curled her lips. Now he has another target to rob. The situation forced my hand. I had no choice. Yang Kai shrugged his shoulders. Seeing that he didn't deny it, the two blood warriors couldn't help frowning. Thinking about it, even the Lu family, which was thousands of kilometers away, had suffered an unexpected calamity because of yesterday's incident. Soon, Lu Liang would be carrying large and small bags to the central capital to deliver gifts to Yang Kai, so how could the nearby Tianyuan City not be implicated? In any case, Yang Kai had been attacked in the sphere of influence of Tianyuan City, so Tianyuan City's responsibility could be big or small. It all depended on whether the leaders of this force were tactful or not. In this sensitive period, any small matter could develop into a big event. Do we need to send a message to Tianyuan City? Tu Feng was obviously quite experienced. Hearing this, Tu Feng couldn't help feeling eager. If necessary, I can go now. They won't dare say anything. Even Tang Yuxian showed an excited look at this moment, seemingly wanting to compete with Tu Feng for the role of messenger. No need, this kind of thing, they will naturally know. Yang Kai shook his head. Then he stood up and said, "All right, let's go. We've wasted a lot of time on the road. I wonder what the central capital has become. Are the two seniors' injuries serious? Do you want to rest for a few more days?" Qiu Yimeng frowned. He asked worriedly. Tu Feng and Tang Yuxian exchanged a glance and quickly shook their heads. "It doesn't matter." Seeing him say so, Qiu Yimeng didn't insist. Without the cloud-treading colts, the five of them could only fly, so their speed was naturally much slower. After a day and a night, the gap between the strength of these young people was clear at a glance. Even after flying for so long, Yang Kai's expression was still calm. His face was not red and his heart was not beating fast, as if he had not used any strength. Qiu Yimeng, on the other hand, was slightly out of breath. In order to keep up with these two immortal ascension boundary masters, her yuan qi consumption was quite serious. As for Luo Xiaoman, she was even more embarrassed, her face red. His forehead was sweating profusely, and the two jade rabbits in front of his chest were moving up and down in the rhythm of his breathing. It was a magnificent sight. However, he gritted his teeth and followed behind the crowd without saying a word. If it weren't for Tang Yuxian not being able to stand by and deliberately taking care of her, Luo Xiaoman would have long been left behind by the group. They took a remote road, so they didn't encounter any dangerous situations. They stopped to rest at night and set off again after a night. The sun rose and the moon disappeared. After a full 8 days, the group finally saw a huge city in the distance. The central capital. It seemed to be the center of the entire world. The size of the central capital could no longer be described with words. Even from a few hundred kilometers away, everyone could still see its outline. That majestic aura rushed over, making people feel small and insignificant. When people thought of the central capital, they couldn't help but think of a certain phrase. North and south don't see each other, the world's greatest city. Standing on the south side of the city, one couldn't see the north side of the city at all. The entire central capital seemed to be an endless sea, a vast expanse of land. Often, such a situation would occur. One side of the city would be covered by dark clouds, lightning, and thunder, but on the other side of the city, the sun would shine brightly and the blue sky would be clear. Even if one was an immortal ascension boundary master, it would take at least 2 to 3 hours to fly across the entire city. From this, it could be seen just how huge this city was. The world's greatest city truly deserved its name. It was hard to imagine how such a huge city, almost the size of a small country, had been established. It was as if it had already existed in the annals of history. For so many years, the central capital's 8 great families had firmly occupied this world's largest city, constantly expanding and consolidating it, allowing it to grow larger and larger. This had also created today's miracle. The group of 5 paused and stared towards the central capital. Although I've always lived here, every time I come back from a trip, I can't help but want to take a few more looks, Tang Yuxian said with some emotion. Tu Feng nodded solemnly. Not only them, but anyone who came outside the central capital would also be amazed by it, whether it was someone who had lived here for a long time or someone who was coming here for the first time. Looking at the giant city he had been away from for several years, Yang Kai's expression remained calm. Only when he thought of his 2 parents would his mood fluctuate slightly. Qiu Yimeng brushed a stray strand of hair behind her ear, glancing over at Yang Kai and saying, "Xiao Man and I will separate from you here. At this time, if we are seen together by others, I'm afraid it will arouse suspicion." Yang Kai nodded. Tu Feng suddenly smiled at Qiu Yimeng and asked, "Young Lady Qiu, in this inheritance war, will your Qiu family stand on the little lord's side?" Qiu Yimeng smiled, staring at Yang Kai for a moment before saying, "Although I am acquainted with your little lord, the inheritance war is of great importance. I need to consider it carefully." "What's there to consider?" Tang Yuxian smiled and struck while the iron was hot. "Besides the little lord, young Lady Qiu doesn't know any of the other young lords, nor do you know their depths. Rashly betting the Qiu family on them is inappropriate. Although even if you lose, the Qiu family's heritage won't be affected. A character like the little lord is undoubtedly worth young Lady Qiu taking a gamble." Qiu Yimeng looked at Yang Kai with a smile, seemingly waiting for something. But after waiting for a long time, Yang Kai didn't seem to have any intention of speaking. Qiu Yimeng couldn't help feeling a little annoyed, snorting lightly, "Then let's see how your little lord performs." There was a deep meaning behind this statement. Performance, in the end, was his performance in front of her. Or was it his performance in the inheritance war? Both Tu Feng and Tang Yuxian's eyes darted around, suddenly both wearing strange looks, as if they had discovered a big secret. Both of them stared at Qiu Yimeng. Qiu Yimeng's expression remained unchanged, still indifferent. Tu Feng continued to add oil to the fire, a wretched look appearing on his face as he said, "If the little lord and young Lady Qiu join forces, they will be a perfect match. The future of the central capital will likely belong to the 2 of you. Perhaps you can even create a beautiful story." "Tsk is K." Tang Yuxian quickly followed up, "I also think so, young Lady Qiu, don't hesitate." "Ah." Qiu Yimeng smiled lightly, as if she didn't understand the meaning of Tu Feng's words. She didn't blush, instead just glancing over at Yang Kai. Just as Tu Feng was about to wipe his mouth and say something, Yang Kai suddenly said, "Until we meet again." This sentence was quite abrupt. Both Tu Feng and Tang Yuxian wanted to take this opportunity to finalize a big ally for Yang Kai. They hadn't expected him to just say goodbye like this. Saying so, Yang Kai really left. The 2 blood warriors were stunned for a moment before cupping their fists to Qiu Yimeng and hurriedly catching up with Yang Kai. Looking at Yang Kai's quickly departing back, Qiu Yimeng also froze in place, unable to recover for a long time. She hadn't expected his actions to be so simple and swift. "That bastard!" Luo Xiaoman said indignantly, "How rude! After all, we've gone through thick and thin together, yet he didn't even say anything and just left?" Qiu Yimeng's eyes flashed thoughtfully. Did he see through it? He should have seen through it, so he didn't even try to persuade her and simply left. This man really isn't easy to fool. "Elder sister Qiu, aren't you angry?" Luo Xiaoman said, somewhat indignant for Qiu Yimeng, stomping her foot. "How could he just ignore you?" "Good." Qiu Yimeng took a deep breath and pulled Luo Xiaoman aside. "Let's go back to the Qiu family first. When we arrive at the Qiu family, first send a message to your Purple Fern Valley so they don't worry." "You haven't seen Big Brother Fan Hong for so long, did you miss him?" Qiu Yimeng asked with a smile, seemingly trying to find something to talk about to dispel the loss in her heart. Luo Xiaoman blushed and shook her head, whispering, "I don't know why, but I haven't thought about him for so long." That's because you've seen all the wonderful things outside. The two girls didn't know each other a year ago, but since they had gone to High Heaven Pavilion, they had encountered all kinds of dangers, but each time they had managed to survive, never leaving each other's side. After experiencing so many trials and tribulations together, whether it was Qiu Yimeng or Luo Xiaoman, both of them regarded each other as family and sisters. As such, Luo Xiaoman had never once objected to Qiu Yimeng's words. On the other side, Yang Kai and the two blood warriors rushed towards the south of the central capital. Tu Feng and Tang Yuxian followed closely behind Yang Kai, neither of them saying a word, but both of them were full of doubts, wondering why Yang Kai didn't care about the Qiu family. If he didn't put the Lu family in his eyes, the two blood warriors would have taken it for granted, but the Qiu family was different. As one of the 8 great families, winning over any one of them would be a huge help. As long as one's mind was clear, there was no reason to let them go so easily. What's more, Qiu Yimeng's status in the Qiu family wasn't low. Winning over Qiu Yimeng was tantamount to winning over the Qiu family. Tu Feng and Tang Yuxian wanted to ask, but didn't know what to say, so they simply followed behind Yang Kai, feeling like they were about to die. After a while, Tang Yuxian quietly sent out a burst of qi towards Tu Feng. The latter frowned and was caught off guard, causing him to let out a low grunt. Tang Yuxian couldn't help rolling her eyes, speechless for a while. Chapter 390. The actions of the two blood warriors were so obvious that they naturally couldn't escape Yang Kai's perception. The speed of their advance slowed down slightly, and after the two of them caught up, Yang Kai turned his head and glanced at them, his expression indifferent. "What's wrong with you?" Both Tu Feng and Tang Yuxian nodded solemnly. "What's there to be surprised about?" Yang Kai smiled lightly, his expression as calm as ever, without any trace of regret on his face. "Little lord, how could you just let young lady Qiu go like this? The Qiu family's influence isn't weak. If it could play a role in the inheritance war, whether it was supplies or talents, it would be guaranteed." Tu Feng didn't hesitate and directly asked. Both he and Tang Yuxian had decided that as long as the family allowed the blood warriors to participate in the inheritance war, they would follow Yang Kai, so naturally, they wouldn't act like before and ignore Yang Kai's actions. Yang Kai slowly shook his head and said lightly, "Qiu Yimeng still has scruples in her heart. She doesn't dare to take a stand right now. Even if I try, the result will be the same." "That's impossible." Tu Feng couldn't help feeling surprised. "I saw that she was very interested in you, little lord. It seems she likes you very much. She even said a lot of good things about you in front of me and Yuxian." Tang Yuxian also nodded slightly. "She likes me?" Yang Kai stared at Tu Feng blankly for a moment before laughing. Tu Feng, if you think so, then you're too naive." Tu Feng wasn't a young man, so when he heard Yang Kai say such things about him, he couldn't help but blush. His old face couldn't help blushing. Perhaps my performance was able to enter her eyes and was much better than the other young people. Yang Kai raised his brow, showing a confident demeanor. Because of this, she felt that I was a little different from the others, but that doesn't mean she likes me. Both Tu Feng and Tang Yuxian frowned. Still, they couldn't agree with Yang Kai's statement. Yang Kai smiled slightly and said, "Who is Qiu Yimeng?" "She is the first young lady of the Qiu family, the first of her generation. Let me ask you, can a woman like her decide her own future?" Tu Feng and Tang Yuxian both thought about it and couldn't help frowning. Qiu Yimeng. She had countless suitors and was one of the most influential figures in the central capital. However, in the face of the pursuit of so many talented young men, Qiu Yimeng still maintained her purity and never once had a relationship with any of the central capital's young lords. The reason for this was because the Qiu family's patriarch, Qiu Shoucheng, had said that whoever wanted to marry Qiu Yimeng would have to marry into the Qiu family. At first, it seemed that Qiu Shoucheng cherished his daughter and didn't want her to leave the Qiu family. But in reality, the Qiu family probably wouldn't want to let go of a chance to win support for their family. In short, Qiu Yimeng's future was not something she could decide. In the future, she was destined to become a chess piece in a marriage alliance, which would bring some benefits to the Qiu family. The ideological education she had received since she was young was probably based on the principle of family supremacy. Her love life had given birth to children. Her marriage was arranged by the Chiu family. She couldn't decide for herself. How could a woman who had received such an education easily choose to stand in Yang Kai's team before the inheritance war began? If she chose so rashly, the Chiu family would never recognize her. You don't believe me? Yang Kai tilted his head and stared at the two blood warriors. Tu Feng and Tang Yuxian didn't answer. She won't return to the central capital with us. That is the best evidence. Yang Kai smiled softly. If she really decided to ally with me, she wouldn't care what others think. So don't say she doesn't like me, because she has always regarded me as a Yang family direct descendant who can form an alliance with her. Even if Yang Kai said seriously, if there is someone better than me, I think the Chiu family will definitely be my enemy in the future. The two blood warriors both wore solemn expressions. Although they faintly felt that Yang Kai's views and ideas were a bit extreme, they had to admit that the young lords and young ladies of the great families really didn't place too much importance on personal relationships. From childhood, they had been influenced by their families, so what they considered was always the interests of the family and their own interests. As for personal feelings, they were only secondary. Subordinate will remember. Tu Feng nodded slightly. Although the blood warriors were powerful, they really couldn't see through the thoughts of the young lords and young ladies of these families. Yang Kai nodded, his heart calm, no longer saying anything. An hour later, the three of them finally arrived at the central capital. The central capital was extremely large, so naturally there were countless gates. In front of the three of them was the south gate. There weren't any bustling ordinary people, nor were there any cultivators. The south gate, which looked like the mouth of a giant beast, was completely silent. Only a few relatively strong cultivators were standing by the south gate, patrolling the surroundings with relaxed expressions on their faces. Because this south gate wasn't something ordinary people could enter. This was the central capital's Yang family's special gate. Each of the 8 great families had its own special city gate. After entering the city gate, there was a special passage that led directly to the Yang family. Except for people from the 8 great families, no one was allowed to pass through these gates or passages. Those who disobeyed would be killed without mercy. The few patrolling cultivators in front of the south gate were only here to put on a show. There was nothing for them to do, so they were naturally very idle. When the 3 of them arrived at the city gate, the several cultivators all wore solemn expressions and quickly turned to look at them. After seeing the tokens on the waists of the 2 blood warriors, all of them cupped their fists and bowed respectfully. Tu Feng and Tang Yuxian both wore indifferent expressions, not even glancing sideways as they followed Yang Kai into the central capital. After the 3 of them left, the cultivators at the gate dared to glance back quietly, all of them surprised. Which young lord came back? He looks quite young, only 17 or 18 years old. A 17 or 18-year-old young lord, could it be the youngest one? Wasn't the youngest young lord rumored to be unable to cultivate? I'm afraid he's just an ordinary person. Why is his aura so calm? It's like he's not ordinary. Whether he's ordinary or not, we don't care, we just need to guard the gate. Don't talk about such things behind his back. It would be bad if one of the family's masters heard it. But speaking of which, isn't that the first young lord to return to the family? The others haven't returned yet. Yang Kai and the 2 blood warriors walked along the passage for less than a stick of incense worth of time before they saw a large group of people waiting in front of them with bored expressions on their faces. The number of people in this group was quite large, about a dozen or so. The one at the head of this group was a fat man, less than 6 feet tall, with a big belly. He was pacing back and forth in front of the crowd, seemingly having walked for a long time, sweat dripping from his fat head and big ears. He was holding a brocade handkerchief in his hand, wiping the sweat from his forehead and neck from time to time. Suddenly seeing the 3 people walking over, the fat man was startled for a moment, but soon after, he was overjoyed and quickly stuffed the brocade handkerchief into his sleeve. Everyone behind him straightened their faces and assumed a welcoming posture. Yang Kai and the 2 blood warriors stopped about 5 meters in front of this group. Looking at the fat man, Yang Kai couldn't help but frown. This fat man was clearly not a member of the Yang family, but rather a foreign member of the Yang family. His strength wasn't very high, but since he was waiting here, it must have been arranged by the family. Yang Kai didn't know what the family was up to. Master, you've worked hard. The fat man first bowed to Tu Feng and Tang Yuxian, his pair of small eyes narrowing into slits as he smiled and turned to Yang Kai. Master, forgive this subordinate's ignorance, but which young lord is this? Tu Feng's expression remained unchanged as he replied faintly, Fourth master's servant, the little lord. The young lords of the family rarely showed themselves when they were at home, so it wasn't surprising that this fat man didn't recognize them. Tu Feng naturally didn't intend to bother with him. The look on the fat man's face was slightly surprised, as if he hadn't expected that the first one to return to the family would be the little lord, but he immediately restrained himself and cupped his fists to the ground. Third-class steward Yin Tianyu, by order of the family, is here to welcome the little lord back to the family. The little lord must have worked hard on this journey and must have worked hard these past few years. A third-class steward status in the Yang family wasn't high, but it wasn't low either. However, this fat man Yin Tianyu's strength was unsightly, so he probably didn't have a martial background. The Yang family was such a big family that it always needed people who were proficient in various aspects of its territory to help manage it. For these people, strength wasn't the most important thing. What was important was their ability to manage their territory. Yang Kai didn't know what Yin Tianyu was responsible for, but he was actually arranged here to welcome the returning young lords. Yang Kai's expression changed slightly as he smiled amiably at Yin Tianyu and said, Steward Yin must have worked hard. You must have waited here for many days, right? Yin Tianyu was surprised to see Yang Kai so kind, but his small eyes became even more spirited as he smiled and humbly replied, It is this subordinate's honor to be able to welcome the young lords back to the family. Waiting here for many days is not a hardship. Yang Kai nodded slightly and asked, What arrangements does the family have for us? The Yang family was different from ordinary families. The tempering of the direct descendants was almost cruel, so the elders in the family basically wouldn't be too kind to the juniors. In the past, when the Yang family's direct descendants returned to the family, they would directly return to their respective residences and no one would come to receive them. But this time, there was a third-class steward waiting here. Obviously there was some kind of arrangement. When Yin Tianyu heard Yang Kai's question, he couldn't help feeling surprised and said, Little lord is really clever. This subordinate admires you. Tu Feng coldly said, There's no need for flattery, just answer the little lord's question directly. Yin Tianyu still had a smile on his face, not showing the slightest trace of embarrassment. It's like this, the family has ordered that the young lords who have returned to the family not be in a hurry to return to their residences, but instead go to the Dragon Transformation Pond first. Dragon Transformation Pond. Tu Feng exclaimed. Yang Kai was also stunned while Tang Yuxian's beautiful eyes flashed brilliantly. None of them had expected that the family would prepare such a big gift for the returning young lords this time. Chapter 391. The Dragon Transformation Pool was a place where a fish could leap over the Dragon Gate and transform into a dragon. This was an important place for the Yang family, and also a treasure trove for the Yang family. The water in the Dragon Transformation Pool was of great benefit to a cultivator. It was said that soaking in it could cleanse one's marrow and transform one's body. If a cultivator could soak in it for a few days, their strength would definitely increase and their aptitude would improve. A cultivator's aptitude was the foundation and cornerstone of their growth. This aptitude determined how high a cultivator could grow and was generally difficult to change unless they took some particularly rare precious treasures. The Yang family's Dragon Transformation Pool had such an effect. It had always been a place where the Yang family members fought to enter. But even the direct descendants of the Yang family found it difficult to enter the Dragon Transformation Pool. They had to be reviewed by the family's elder court, and if the elder court felt that a direct descendant was worth investing in, they would be allowed to enter. As for the Yang family members who didn't share the same surname, It was even more difficult to enter the dragon transformation pool unless they made some kind of extraordinary contribution. Little Lord, you Xian and I have both been to the dragon transformation pool. It's a very good place. Tu Feng heard this and whispered excitedly. And when I was protecting young Lady Mei, I was seriously injured and almost lost my life. Fortunately, young Lady Mei asked Fifth Master to intercede on my behalf, allowing me to enter the dragon transformation pool. Not only did my injury stabilize, but my strength also improved. Tang Yuxian also nodded. How could Yang Kai not know the value and efficacy of the dragon transformation pool? When he heard Yin Tianyu say this, he couldn't help smiling bitterly. When he was still at home, because of his congenital deficiency, his father, Yang Yingfeng, had applied to the Council of Elders many times to allow him to soak in the dragon transformation pool. He wanted to see if it could make up for his shortcomings. But no matter how many times Yang Yingfeng applied, he was always rejected by the Council of Elders. Why waste the efficacy of the dragon transformation pool for a cripple? As a result, every time his father Yang Yingfeng saw him, he would feel ashamed, as if it was because of his stubborn illness that he was congenitally deficient. During that time, his mother, Dong Suzhu, also felt sad all the time. She washed her face with tears. Yang Yingfeng's parents would often accept tasks from the family. He worked so hard just to earn some merits so that Yang Kai would have a chance to enter the dragon transformation pool. But no matter how hard they tried, they were unable to achieve their wishes. There will definitely be a chance next time. Every time he returned from the Elder Hall, Yang Yingfeng would say the same thing, seemingly trying to comfort himself. He also seemed to be comforting Yang Kai. The guilt and dejection in his eyes were still vivid in her mind. Back then, his parents had tried so hard but failed to achieve their goal. Who would have thought that today, the Elders Guild would take the initiative to open it up? That was their hard work and struggle back then. What was the reason? Thinking of this, Yang Kai's mood fluctuated slightly and his eyes flashed. He nodded lightly. Yin Tianyu's smile was still plastered on his face. He cupped his hands and said, "Little young master, there's no time to lose. Should we head to the dragon transformation pool now?" Inexplicably, Kai Yang's heart gave birth to a feeling of rejection. He furrowed his brows, but before he could say anything, the crisp cry of an eagle suddenly rang out above his head. Hearing this cry, everyone couldn't help looking up at the sky, their expressions becoming strange. The golden feather eagle on Yang Kai's shoulder also flapped its wings and flew up into the sky in the blink of an eye. Today is a double blessing, another young lord has returned. Yin Tianyu laughed. He had been waiting here for many days, but no young lord had returned. Unexpectedly, two of them had returned today, naturally causing him to feel excited. As soon as he finished speaking, a group of people appeared from the other side of the passage. At the head of the group was a young man about 25 or 26 years old. His eyes shone brightly and his appearance was extraordinary. Riding atop a cloud-treading colt, he leisurely strolled over. Behind him, there were also two blood warriors. Behind these two blood warriors, there were actually several other masters with decent strength. Not far away, Yang Kai and the young man's eyes met midair, the latter's eyes flashing slightly as he stared at Yang Kai with slight surprise. Immediately, the young man smiled and nodded gently to Yang Kai. Yang Kai also nodded in response. Seeing this young man's face, Yang Kai also knew who he was. Yang Zhao, the second oldest son of the family's direct descendants, was the son of Yang Kai's great-uncle Yang Yinghao. His great-uncle Yang Yinghao was the current patriarch of the Yang family. It was also because he had been wounded in the war with the Ash-Gray Cloud Evil Land that the family had recalled all the young lords who had gone out for life experience. Unlike Yang Kai's obscurity, although Yang Zhao had never been publicly known before, most people in the family, because of his relationship with Yang Yinghao, knew of his existence and even knew of his face. Yang Kai had only met him a few times but wasn't familiar with him. After seeing Yang Zhao, the fat man Yin Tianyu's expression immediately became dignified, even the people behind him holding their breaths. Regardless of Yang Zhao's own strength, regardless of his performance in the inheritance war, he was the son of the current patriarch, so they couldn't neglect him. Little Lord. Yin Tianyu was an astute person, first greeting Yang Kai with a respectful attitude. I'll leave you to it. Yang Kai nodded lightly. Many thanks, little lord. Saying so, Yin Tianyu quickly straightened his clothes and waited for Yang Zhao to approach before quickly repeating what he had just said to Yang Kai. From beginning to end, Yang Zhao sat atop his cloud-treading colt, not moving at all. After listening to Yin Tianyu's report, he nodded gently, I understand. Saying so, he turned his eyes to Yang Kai and smiled. Is it little brother Kai? Second brother. Yang Kai cupped his fists slightly and grinned. Sure enough, it's little brother Kai. Yang Zhao laughed loudly as he swept his eyes over Yang Kai. It said that a woman changes 18 times between childhood and womanhood. I see that a man also changes 18 times. After not seeing you for a few years, second brother almost didn't recognize you. Where is that weak little brat from so many years ago? Now you're clearly a handsome young man, worthy of being a member of my Yang family. From his words, it was obvious that he was the patriarch of the Yang family. Second brother overpraises me. Kai Yang didn't seem to understand, but his expression remained indifferent as he replied. While the two were talking, the several masters behind Yang Zhao were also sizing up Yang Kai, but after a while, they couldn't help showing some disdain, seemingly looking down on Yang Kai. Only the two blood warriors didn't show any change in expression. Tu Feng and Tang Yuxian were also the same. The blood warriors were loyal to the Yang family, and since Yang Zhao and Yang Kai were both young lords of the Yang family, they naturally couldn't show any disdain towards either of them. However, they noticed the disdain of these strangers. Both Tu Feng and Tang Yuxian couldn't help frowning. Both of them stared towards these people with cold expressions. The faces of these people suddenly changed and they quickly restrained their expressions. Yang Zhao's eyes flashed as he glanced over at Tu Feng and Tang Yuxian with some surprise. He hadn't expected these two to be so protective of Yang Kai. Even he hadn't received much respect from the two blood warriors who had escorted him back home. The two blood warriors had simply completed their escort mission and hadn't even said a word to him. After a moment of comparison, Yang Zhao immediately realized that there was something unusual about this situation. Yang Kai seemed to be quite liked by these two blood warriors. Why was that? Suppressing these doubts in his heart, Yang Zhao didn't show any expression, simply asking, did little brother Kai fly all the way back? He saw that Yang Kai and the others didn't even have mounts. Naturally, he would think so. Yang Kai nodded. Then it must have been a hard journey. Yang Zhao sighed sympathetically before dismounting his cloud-treading colt and walking straight over to Yang Kai, saying affectionately, if little brother Kai doesn't mind, how about we go to the dragon transformation pond together? While we're on the way, I'll let second brother hear about your glorious deeds these past few years. Yang Kai smiled. Let's go. Yang Zhao also laughed. After taking a few steps, Yang Zhao suddenly turned back and said, right? You go to the house and wait for me, I'll be back in 3 or 5 days. The strangers nodded together. The two blood warriors didn't respond. They were only responsible for safely escorting Yang Zhao back to the family. Now that they had arrived here, their mission was complete and they could naturally return to the blood warrior hall. You two have worked hard. Yang Kai also smiled at Tu Feng and Tang Yuxian. The two of them shouted in unison, Little Lord, take care. Such an affectionate attitude couldn't help causing Yang Zhao and the other two blood warriors to raise their eyebrows. After Yang Kai and Yang Zhao left, the 4 blood warriors glanced at each other but didn't say anything before flying off towards the blood warrior hall. Halfway there, one of the 2 blood warriors asked, Tu Feng, why do you and Tang Yuxian seem to care a lot about the little lord? Did he do something special? Why don't you tell us about it? The blood warriors were all very familiar with each other. In front of outsiders, they wouldn't show it, but when there was no one else around, they naturally wouldn't hesitate. Tu Feng slowly shook his head. No, it's just that the little lord is very kind. Although he wasn't an outsider, Tu Feng wasn't stupid enough to betray Yang Kai. Because the people here could become Yang Kai's enemy at any time, if he talked about his good points now, it would only harm him. The man obviously didn't believe Tu Feng's words and couldn't help curling his lips. What about you two? How was the second young lord? Tu Feng changed the subject and asked. The two blood warriors looked indifferent, the one who had asked the previous question saying, "Nothing too special, his performance was quite normal." The four blood warriors suddenly glanced at each other and all of them smiled meaningfully. Everyone knew that the other party was talking nonsense. But even if they knew, none of them dared to expose it. At this time, no matter which blood warrior it was, they absolutely couldn't betray the young lords. Even if the patriarch or the elder council asked, they couldn't reveal anything. A blood warrior was a blood warrior, synonymous with loyalty. Yang Kai and Yang Zhao were leisurely strolling towards the dragon transformation pond at this moment. Along the way, the two brothers only talked about the tedious things they had experienced in the outside world over the past few years, not mentioning anything about the sect or their own accomplishments. Both of them knew that this was their brother, but also their enemy. If they didn't do anything right, this young lord would try to trip them up and beat them to a pulp. The inheritance war was a civil war between brothers, a battle of wits and courage. Chapter 392. The two brothers walked together in a harmonious atmosphere, as if they were close brothers. After a short while, they arrived at the location of the dragon transformation pond. Outside, there were countless cultivator guards, but in secret, there were many masters paying close attention to this place, their divine senses constantly spreading out. Once an outsider tried to approach this place, they would be ruthlessly and directly killed. There was no room for discussion. Once, a steward from a first-class family had come to pay tribute to the Yang family, but after delivering the tribute, he somehow lost his way and ended up 10 kilometers outside the dragon transformation pond. Before he had time to say a word, he was killed on the spot by the Yang family masters guarding this place. After this incident spread out, the first-class family not only didn't dare to question him, but instead sent someone to apologize with double the amount of gifts. The Yang family's treasure trove had always been a heavily guarded location. Even though it was inside the central capital, with the dragon transformation pond as its center, the surrounding several dozen kilometers had still been maintained in its most primitive state. At first glance, one would probably think they had stumbled into the great wilderness. Shrouded in clouds, it was impossible to see one's hand in front of one's face, covering a large area. Lush mountains and forests were looming, and from time to time, one could see a few silhouettes. In the deepest part of this place was the dragon transformation pond. When Yang Zhao and Yang Kai arrived here, they quickly closed their mouths. Yang Zhao stepped forward and cupped his fists. Disciple Yang Zhao has been ordered to come to the dragon transformation pond. May I ask which senior is guarding this place? From the clouds, a strange voice floated out. This old master is Xiao Jingqing, so it is young Lord Zhao. Young Lord Zhao, there is another person beside young Lord Zhao. Who is it? Before Yang Kai could answer, Yang Zhao quickly took over and said with a smile, "It's my little brother Kai." The voice in the clouds was silent for a while, seemingly pondering who this little brother Kai Yang Zhao was talking about was, but after a long time said, "Since you've come, 2 young lords may come in." As these words were spoken, the clouds in front of them seemed to be pushed aside by 2 giant invisible hands. The clouds rolled to the sides, revealing a clear passage in the middle. It wasn't until this moment that Yang Kai and Yang Zhao were shocked to discover this. On both sides of this passage stood many of the Yang family's masters. The one closest to the two of them was less than 5 meters away. Just now, these people were wrapped in clouds and mist. Unexpectedly, neither of the two brothers noticed it, and they didn't know what kind of mysteries were hidden within the clouds. These Yang family masters were obviously different from the people outside. Their auras were much calmer, and most of them were at the Yuan Qi boundary. Their cultivations were also much more vigorous than the average person. Occasionally, there were a few immortal ascension boundary masters scattered among them, but all of them stared at the two of them with solemn expressions. Yang Zhao and Yang Kai looked at each other for a moment before their expressions couldn't help turning solemn as they strode forward towards the entrance. "Greetings, young masters." "Please, young masters." Along the way, all the cultivator nodded slightly, greeting the two of them respectfully. Yang Zhao wore a smile on his face as he strode forward. Yang Kai didn't say a word, quietly releasing his divine sense to sense the surroundings, secretly surprised. Although he was also a member of the Yang family, and a direct descendant of the Yang family, Yang Kai still didn't understand what kind of capital the Yang family had. However, after probing around, he was surprised to find that the cultivators around him were undoubtedly much stronger and more powerful than the ordinary disciples from the first or second-class sects in the same realm. Their essence, qi, and soul, the strength of their physique, vitality, bones, meridians, and yuan qi all seemed to be much purer. Yang Kai estimated that the two people here would be enough to defeat 3 cultivators of the same realm outside. Of course, this was only a competition between ordinary disciples. Even so, it was enough to surprise him. Moreover, the surrounding clouds and mist were quite strange. When Yang Kai probed them with his divine sense, it was as if he was immersed in a pool of stagnant water. There should be some kind of spirit array operating here. After walking for a full stick of incense worth of time, the front suddenly opened up and the clouds and mist suddenly disappeared, giving the two of them a sense of relief. Beside a huge pool, 3 old men with white hair and beards sat cross-legged, their eyes shining brightly as they stared towards Yang Zhao and Yang Zhao. After seeing 2 people emerge from the mist, the old man in the middle smiled and asked, "Yang Zhao?" Yang Zhao's expression became serious as he quickly cupped his fists. Disciple greets 3 seniors. To be able to guard the dragon transformation pond, whether these 3 were surnamed Yang or not, their status in the Yang family was not low. They were even comparable to the elders of the family. This was why Yang Zhao was so serious. Xiao Zhengqing and the other 2 smiled slightly, seemingly very satisfied with Yang Zhao's attitude, turning their eyes to Yang Kai and asking suspiciously, "Are you the one who served the previous generation's 4th brother, Yang Yingfeng?" "Yes," Yang Kai greets 3 seniors. Yang Kai nodded lightly. Yang Kai was also shocked. These 3 were all peak Immortal Ascension boundary masters. In other words, any one of them was no worse than Ling Tai Su before he broke through. At this moment, they were actually guarding the dragon transformation pond, showing just how much importance the Yang family attached to this place. With these 3 here, along with the mysterious spirit array and countless hidden masters, it was likely only an above Immortal Ascension boundary master would be able to break through its defenses. After learning about Yang Kai's background, Xiao Zhengqing just nodded slightly while the other 2 didn't say anything. It seemed that for them, Yang Zhao was more interesting and could arouse their attention. Seeing how obvious their reactions were, Yang Kai wasn't too surprised. "Senior, why did the family arrange for us to come to the dragon transformation pond first this time?" Yang Zhao saw that Xiao Zhengqing was quite optimistic about him and couldn't help but ask, quickly asking the question in his heart. Xiao Zhengqing smiled lightly and said, "Naturally, it is to give you a better space to develop. You have been outside for a few years now, at most, you have entered a first-class force to gain experience. How could the resources there compare to our Yang families? The secret arts and martial skills you cultivate, the medicinal efficacies you absorb, and the many impurities your body produces. Once you enter the dragon transformation pond, you will be able to cleanse yourself of these impurities." Yang Zhao smiled happily and respectfully said, "I will definitely live up to the family's expectations." Xiao Zhengqing laughed. "Good, as expected of the patriarch's son, you are truly different from others. The dragon transformation pond is just below us. You can enter it yourself." Yang Kai couldn't help but frown slightly. Although he didn't expect Xiao Zhengqing to be so optimistic about him, these words still made him feel a little uncomfortable. Yang Zhao didn't say anything. Right now, he had no power or influence, so if he really tried to say anything, it would only be a thankless task and would only make him appear to be overestimating himself. If Yang Zhao wanted to change his mind, there was only one way. That was to establish himself above the entire Yang family. At that time, everyone would have to obediently follow his orders and act according to his mood. Yang Zhao nodded slightly, and together with Yang Kai, the 2 of them looked down and suddenly saw a huge pond. Only its outline could be seen, It was impossible to see the water inside because above this pond was a thick layer of clouds. However, Yang Kai was keenly aware that this layer of clouds was different from the ones they had just passed through. The clouds from before were only used to confuse, but the layer above the dragon transformation pool was formed by the gathering of the energy of the world. It was as if the entire dragon transformation pool was a crystallization of energy. Dense steam rose into the air, condensing into a layer of clouds that covered the top. The dragon transformation pond is a place where one can cleanse their body. This opportunity is not easy to come by, so you should cherish it, Xiao Zhengqing smiled. Another person interjected, the dragon transformation pond is also a place to test a person's aptitude. The longer one stays inside, the more outstanding their aptitude is. Yang Zhao, you need to perform well, you are different from the average young lord. You are the son of the current patriarch, many people are optimistic about you. Yang Zhao's face was filled with excitement, seemingly eager to prove himself, quickly cupping his fists and nodding, yes. Go. Xiao Zhengqing waved his hand and an invisible force wrapped around both Yang Zhao and Yang Kai, gently sending them into the dragon transformation pond. The clouds churned and the two fell into the pond at the same time, disappearing. Suddenly, a cold feeling washed over him. The water of this dragon transformation pond seemed to have some kind of magical effect. Yang Kai clearly felt some kind of energy pouring into his body's meridians and pores. As this energy entered his whole body became tingling with pain. But then, this pain suddenly disappeared as this energy drilled into his meridians and, under the burning of his true Yang Yuan Qi, converged into his unyielding golden skeleton. Yang Kai was stunned, suddenly feeling that this dragon transformation pond seemed to be a bit untrue. It didn't have any of the magical effects it was rumored to have. Turning his head to look at Yang Zhao not far away, Yang Kai's expression became even more strange. He found that his second brother seemed to be enduring a great deal of pain at the moment, his entire face red and his Yuan Qi madly circulating, drawing the energy from the dragon transformation pond into his body. Soon after, some impurities were expelled from his body, and some filthy substances were added to the clear pool water. Yang Kai quickly swam a little further away, lost in thought. Looking at Yang Zhao's current appearance, the dragon transformation pond clearly had some kind of effect and could really help people cleanse their body. But why couldn't he feel it? After thinking about it for a long time, Yang Kai suddenly realized something, a look of surprise filling his face. If his guess was right, it must be because of the myriad drug liquid. The myriad drug liquid, if taken over a long period of time, was able to cleanse one's body and fundamentally improve one's aptitude. Since obtaining the myriad drug liquid until now, as long as there weren't any unforeseen circumstances, Yang Kai had basically taken a drop of it every day. After such a long time, the impurities in his body should have been completely eliminated and his aptitude should have improved significantly. Now that he had entered the dragon transformation pond, what use would it have? The effect of the dragon transformation pond was definitely not as good as the myriad drug liquid. Understanding this point, Yang Kai's expression became disappointed. Influenced by his childhood beliefs, he had been looking forward to the effects of the dragon transformation pond, but now it had no effect on him, so naturally he was disappointed. The dragon transformation pond didn't have any effect on him, and now that he had just entered it, he couldn't just leave directly. Yang Kai suddenly felt bored and could only wait silently, circulating his true Yang secret art and absorbing and refining the energy in the dragon transformation pond. Welcome to Immortal Cultivation Audiobooks, your gateway to the mystical world of Xianxia. Dive into legendary tales of martial arts, spiritual growth, and immortal ascension. Here, we bring you full-length English audiobooks of the best Wuxia and Xianxia stories, from young prodigies to ancient sect wars. Perfect for fans of Against the Gods, martial world, and tales of demons and gods.